artificial intelligence by example. That one was to give the reader the basics. So I was supposing that the reader was beginning artificial intelligence, and I wanted to introduce all of the main algorithms and add genetic algorithms, neuromorphic computing, and quantum computing. So I wanted the basic clustering algorithms for the person to know. But at the same time, at every chapter, I always begin with philosophy or ideas. Then I introduce some math, then I introduce the program. So I wanted the reader to already have 3 dimensions. That means the philosophy, the math, abstraction with no programs, and then go into the program. So I was figuring that by the end of the book, the person will be able to think. And I showed many examples of implementations, the difficulty of talking to people in real life, because I took it out of my experience with projects. So I was thinking about if someone really reads the book to the end, he really has a good idea of what it is, the difficulties, and from different dimensions.
Perfect.
So that was the first book. When I reached the end of the first book, then I was talking to my editor, Tushar Gupta, which is the producer, and he was saying, yeah, but you provide results, but can people really understand how it was done? It's a black box. So we were thinking, how could we make it, how can people, someone that doesn't know about artificial intelligence, how can he see why the decision was made and explain it? So then we thought, that I should write a book on explainable AI, which would go with artificial intelligence by example. And then you take an algorithm in this book and it tells you why the algorithm chose it. It shows you, for example, if it's a cat, because it looked at the nose and the eyes. If it's a text, it chose certain words. So it's explainable AI is explaining the ideas of the first book with a white box versus a black box.
Makes sense.
And then all of a sudden, Google came up in 2017 and swept away all the tradition of deep learning by saying, in deep learning, you have all these layers, but they're not the same size in terms of architecture. They all do different things. And then you have these recurrent neural networks that keep memorizing what's going on. Like B remembers A, C has to remember B and A, D has to. So at one time it just explodes and it gets lost. And they say, forget about this. We're going to build a new architecture and every layer is the same size. Everything's the same size and it does the same thing. And inside, we're not going to do sequences. We're going to let all these little elements interact with weights and compare it. So it's a free system, but organized in a very structured architecture, so you can do parallel processing. So that's quite a change. That's the biggest change I saw in decades, because it did. Let's do away with all these layers that are different and just normal blocks that we put together.
Right, the AI becomes a Lego box.
Sequences. Let the systems interact, freely as in very long sequences and compare it to what we want to do. So that led to transformers, which I think we have to read the first 2 books first, or read another book, because it's more advanced. But I recommend some readers to read it without reading that, because at the last chapter I talk about like fake news or things like that. So it makes it interesting. Just in a nutshell, for me, fake news is what the other person tells you and you don't agree with today.
I like that, yeah.
So if someone says something you don't like, well, that's fake news. If someone says something you like, oh, that's true.
You just reminded me, on my dinner table, I always argue with my teenager boy. Mom, I don't disagree with you, and I don't disagree with you, and then let's kind of argue each other.
Yes, because the problem is, it comes from cognitive dissonance. It's the most human beings can't live with conflicting concepts in their minds. Like, you can't say, I like this president and I don't like this president, or I hate them. And in a human being's mind, it just can't last like that. So at one point they're going to say, no, it's like that. It's what I told you before with emotions. It's just, there are too many parameters. And then your teenager, someone will say, he'll have to stop and say, no, it's like that. Because it's just too tiring. But in fact, that's not the way discussions should go. Well, I take a long time sometimes. I say, okay, let me listen to your parameters. So give me all the parameters, and let's put all my parameters, and let's begin to find which ones fit. And let's stop with the last ones. And with the last ones, okay, fine. I mean, we disagree, but let's. The truth is both sides of the coin, the heads and the tails. There's no absolute truth on this planet. It's just heads and tails. Like people can say something very strong. Why do women do this in one country, but in another country, women are going to say, why do women do that in the other country? Or a man will do something in one. There's variations in culture, in countries, cultures, states, family, companies. So what I do is I add all these dimensions and I put them all together, and I don't mind cognitive dissonance. It's music for me. And I say, well, the truth is all of that. It just depends which perspective you're looking at. Like a teenager might say, I don't care about studying. I want to live. I want to live.
Favorite statement.
I want to go out. I want to have fun because I don't know how long I'm going to live. And I want to listen to music, and I want to have fun. I don't want to study. I don't want to even open a book. I want to go out with my friends and have fun. And then the parent says, well, if you don't study, well, that's all you'll be able to do later is have fun because you won't have a job. Okay, so these are two conflicting statements, but in fact, in time and space, it's just when we were teenagers, it was the same. So now we have to find a way to explain what the future is.
That's right.
And find ways, to make learning fun or something, or it's education to say, yes, you're right today, but what about in 10 years? Are you right again? And what about 20? So let's say you know nothing, you don't have a high school diploma. What are you going to do at 25? How much money are you going to earn? I don't care, I want to live. Yeah, but you won't be able to live much because you're going to have to pay for a lot of things. You won't have the money to pay for them.
Right.
I'll see then. Well, then it's too late to learn. So it takes a lot of time to go through cognitive dissonance. And it's easier to say, I don't agree, and then get into a conflict. But you have to take all the parameters.
But we talk about a lot of the philosophy aspect. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that's all about artificial intelligence, because it's the same thing when you're reading any of my books. What are you going to do with the algorithm? Who are you going to talk to it about? So you can't say it's part of the learning process of understanding that the books are there to give you more and more and more parameters to understand artificial intelligence, but also to think. Because you can apply, like K-means clustering is just, finding points that go together. You can project that in real life conversations. What are the different clusters in this conversation or in a room? The whole goal of these books is not to build only machines, it's to build the person up, so that at the end of the 3 books, the person has complex thinking.